Peter Wittig is Germany's ambassador to the UN. He joins us now from New York. Susan Rice speaking of a collective way forward. Obviously, the violence on the ground continues despite that collective campaign that many Western governments, including the US and Germany, engaged in, which is to expel Syrian diplomats from their countries. Practically speaking, how far can this go? How much of an impact can it have?
I didn't understand you. You're talking about the expulsion of the Syrian ambassador?
Yes, I am.
Yes, well, this is a direct reaction to the massacre in Al-Hula. We reacted swiftly together with our partners to send out a strong message that we will not accept this blatant violation of all the international humanitarian law and the failure of the Syrian government to protect its own people. So this was just a signal. But of course, today we deliberated in the Security Council what the next steps could be. I think one conclusion of this massacre is that the situation cannot continue like this. We have reached, as Kofi Annan said, a tipping point. I would say a low point in this conflict. So we have to think about what to do, and we made some suggestions to ratchet up the pressure on the Assad government to finally, at long last, comply with the Annan plan.
But you say you are sending a message to Damascus by expelling those Syrian diplomats. What message are you sending? Are you not telling Damascus, in essence, that all diplomatic channels are now closed and that ultimately there must be a military solution to this?
No, we expelled the ambassador to Berlin. There is still diplomatic staff on the ground, and we don't exclude to talk to the Syrian authorities, but this was a visible sign that such blatant violation of any humanitarian standards cannot be tolerated, and hopefully it is understood by the Assad government. But let me be very clear. My government is very strongly of the view that we have to exhaust all possibilities to find a political situation to that crisis. We see no merit in a militarization of the conflict. We want a political solution, and that's why we want to save and safeguard the Annan plan. But that means those who undermine the Annan plan have to eventually face sanctions and tough action by the Security Council.
But since the violence began last year, the EU actually agreed on 15 rounds of sanctions, an oil embargo, an arms embargo, a trade embargo, assets freeze, travel bans on some of the inner circle of the Assad government. What else is there to sanction? These measures clearly have failed. What else can you do? What else should you do at this stage?
Those were targeted sanctions by the European Union. Those were not global sanctions. They were not sanctions imposed by the Security Council. You know well that Russia and China vetoed twice rather mild sanctions resolutions that we suggested together with our partners. So the EU acted as a regional organization, but we think eventually, in order to increase the pressure on the Assad government to comply with our major tool, which is the Annan plan, we need to consider further measures, and we are at the beginning of a longer process, of course, but we think sanctions against those who undermine, who are outside the Annan plan, are a measure that can be envisaged.
But some Western governments have already laid that Annan plan to rest, and it obviously isn't working this far. Massacres go on, the violence go on, perpetrated by either side, perhaps. The French president says he doesn't rule out military intervention. Does your government share that same position?
We have made it abundantly clear. Once again, we want to exhaust all possibilities to find a political solution. We cannot see any military solution to this conflict that doesn't spill over to the whole region and creates mayhem in the whole region. So we've got to be cautious with this. And we therefore advocate to focus on the Annan plan. This is the best plan we have. Make it effective, make a political dialogue happen. Of course, cessation of violence is a prerequisite, but
just to be clear,
talks
Ambassador,
of militarization of this conflict are not helpful.
Do you agree with the Russians? And perhaps you just answered my question. The Russians who say they are categorically opposed to foreign military intervention. Do you agree with them?
We have agreements and disagreements with the Russians. We agree with the Russians that they will have a role in the solution of the crisis. They wield enormous influence on Damascus. But we have disagreed with them on a couple of crucial moments. And as I mentioned, when it came to resolutions of the Security Council sanctioning the Assad government, we disagreed and we spoke out very clearly. But it is clear Russia will have a role in this, and we want to try to work with Russia on the solution of the crisis. And by the way, this Friday, President Putin will be coming to Berlin. That's his first stop in Europe. And of course, Syria will be very high on the agenda when our leaders discuss with him.
Ambassador Peter Wittig, Germany's permanent representative to the United Nations, thank you very much.